I was 7 the first time I realized my parents didn't actually like me. Not in the "you're grounded, no dessert" kind of way, but in the way where you start to understand that your presence is more of a utility than a joy. My name's Derek. I'm 35 now, and if you asked my mom to name her children, she'd smile like a proud peacock and say, "Just our girl, Amelia. We only needed one." Then maybe, if someone reminded her, she'd go, "Oh, and Derek too." Like an afterthought, like something she remembered on her grocery list after she'd already checked out. Amelia is 32, and if you've ever met someone who could fall flat on their face and still get applauded for the elegance of their fall, that's her. My sister has this talent, this deeply annoying, almost magical talent, of being the center of every conversation, even when she's not around. My mom and dad could be talking about climate change or the price of eggs, and somehow, it'd circle back to Amelia's smile, or her job, or the time she almost got cast as an extra in a yogurt commercial 8 years ago. She didn't get it, by the way, but they said she was so close. Growing up, I learned that if Amelia got a B+, it was a miracle of the modern age. If I got straight A's, it was, well, that's what you're supposed to do, Derek. If she spilled juice, it was, poor baby, accidents happen. If I knocked over a cup, it was, why are you always so careless? I used to think maybe I was just being dramatic, that all siblings had a bit of that dynamic, the golden child and the invisible one. But as the years went by, it became painfully clear that in our household, Amelia was the sun, and I was just expected to orbit quietly. I moved out at 19. Not for college. I couldn't afford it, and my parents sure weren't offering. But because I couldn't take another dinner where they pretended I didn't exist while fawning over Amelia's latest karaoke performance or half-baked business idea. I found a job at a local auto shop, fixed up a cheap Honda Civic with my own hands, and started building a life from scratch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I learned to budget, to save, to eat on $10 a week if I had to. No one ever offered help. Not once. Amelia, meanwhile, floated through life like she was in a rom-com montage. She dropped out of her marketing degree in year 2 because it was stifling her creativity. Then it was cosmetology school. 2 months in, she decided it was too toxic. Then a jewelry startup, a YouTube channel, a short-lived Etsy store that sold personalized coasters for $60 a pop. Every time she failed, my parents were there with a net, and I mean a luxurious net. Rent, covered, car payments. They gave her mine, actually, after I upgraded. And when that car broke down, I was the one they called to just go take a look at it, honey. You're good with this stuff. And I helped. For years. Not because they asked nicely, they never did, but because deep down, I still hoped that if I just kept being reliable, maybe one day they'd see me. Appreciate me. Maybe one day, they'd even say thank you. That day never came. By the time I hit 30, I had my own small business, a modest car repair shop with a few employees and steady work. Nothing flashy, but I wasn't struggling. I didn't have kids yet, though my wife and I were thinking about trying. Meanwhile, Amelia had gotten married to a guy named Trey, who seemed nice enough but had the financial instincts of a drunken raccoon. They lived in a rented 3-bedroom, which my parents furnished top to bottom as a wedding gift, including a $2,400 sectional couch and a king-sized bed I couldn't have afforded even now. Then Amelia had twins, and everything shifted. It's not that I wasn't happy for her. I was, genuinely. But suddenly, every single conversation with my parents revolved around the babies. They cooed over pictures of them eating bananas, sent me group texts with diaper updates like I was a stockholder, and even started calling themselves Nana and Pop Pop, like they were the stars of their own Hallmark special. Which, fine. Grandparents get excited. I get it. What I didn't get was why, after all these years of being background noise, I was suddenly being called constantly. Not to chat, not to catch up, but to pay. First it was, hey, honey, Amelia's having a rough month. Would you mind covering her electric bill just this once? Then it was groceries. Then rent. Then, the babies need formula, and she's just so exhausted. And I said yes. Again, like an idiot. Not because I had money to throw around, but because I couldn't stomach the idea of my nieces struggling. Even if I was furious at my sister, those kids didn't choose any of this. Over time, it became the norm. I wasn't just the guy who fixed their cars or ran errands. I was the unofficial family ATM. My wife didn't love it, but she trusted me to set boundaries. Boundaries I kept promising I'd set and never did. Then, last month, everything snapped. We had a rare family dinner at my parents' place. It was supposed to be a little celebration, Amelia's birthday. They made lasagna, decorated the dining room with balloons that said Queen for a day, and played some slideshow of her greatest moments on the TV. I'm not joking. There were pictures of her in a tiara at 6, on a swing set at 8, holding a fake diploma at 25. I sat there with my lukewarm plate, half listening to my dad narrate Amelia's entrepreneurial journey like it was a TED Talk. Eventually, my wife leaned over and whispered, "Are we invisible, or is this some kind of weird cult?" I gave her a tired smile and kept chewing. Then, just before dessert, my mom clinked her glass and said, "I just want to say how proud we are of Amelia. She's such a wonderful mother, and her girls are just the light of our lives." Everyone clapped. Even Trey, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I was about to stand up and start clearing plates when my mom added, casually, "You know, Derek, we hope your kids turn out almost as great as hers. Though I guess they'll always come second to the twins, huh?" She laughed, like it was a harmless joke. My dad joined in, elbowed me like we were buddies. "You know it's true, son. You can't beat perfection." I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. I just stared at them. Then I stood up. Calm. Not angry. Not yelling. Just done. I set my fork down and said, "Cool. Then let her handle the bills from now on. I'm done paying for everything." There was a pause. My mom's smile twitched, confused. "Wait, what bills? We never got anything from you." I didn't say another word. Just walked to the door, grabbed my coat, and left. Behind me, I heard my wife mutter, "Finally," as she followed. That was 2 weeks ago. The silence since then has been eerie. Not a single call. No texts. Not even from Amelia. It's like I dropped a bomb in the middle of their fantasy world, and now they're waiting to see if the smoke clears or if there's more coming. And trust me, there's more coming. I didn't expect silence to feel this loud. You'd think after all the years of being ignored, of sitting through endless Amelia this and Amelia that, I'd be used to it. But this felt different. Heavier. Like the kind of silence that isn't just absence, it's punishment. Retaliation. I checked my phone maybe 20 times a day that first week. Not because I wanted to hear from them. I didn't. But because a small, spiteful part of me knew they'd be stewing. I imagined the group chat buzzing with passive-aggressive comments, my mom wringing her hands while whispering about how dramatic I'd been. I pictured Amelia pretending to be above it all, smirking while secretly counting the minutes until I caved. But I didn't cave. And still nothing. It wasn't until day 9 that the first message came through. It was from my dad. Short. Cold. No punctuation. "Call us when you're ready to apologize." I just stared at the screen and laughed. Out loud. Not a bitter laugh. Not angry. Just this hollow, stunned kind of amusement. Apologize? Me? For what exactly? For finally standing up after a lifetime of being their personal doormat? My wife, Serena, saw the text over my shoulder. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a mug of tea and sat next to me on the couch. We'd been here before, 100 times, me venting and pacing and rationalizing every bizarre thing my family did. But this time, she just squeezed my hand and said, "So what now?" That was the real question, wasn't it? Because as much as I wanted to just walk away and never look back, part of me needed closure. Or justice. Or maybe just the truth. I spent the next few days pulling receipts. Literally. Old bank transfers, Venmo logs, text messages, email confirmations. Years of quiet help, of rent top-ups and utility payments, and last-minute emergencies. I tallied everything, labeled it neatly in a spreadsheet, even highlighted the dates they asked for help. The grand total? Just over $41,000. $41,000. And not once, not a single time, had anyone ever said thank you. When I showed Serena the spreadsheet, she blinked twice and said, "Babe, you do realize you could have put a down payment on a second house with this, right?" Yeah, I did. And I didn't even want the money back. That wasn't the point. The point was that they'd spent years pretending I was just some jealous, distant older brother while happily funneling money from my account like I was their own personal trust fund. But that's not even the worst part. See, the breaking point didn't come when they laughed at me. It didn't come when they denied everything or went silent after I walked out. It came exactly 2 weeks later, on a random Thursday afternoon, when I got a call from the bank. Hi, Mr. Whitmore. We're calling to verify some unusual activity on your joint account ending in 1045. I frowned. I don't have a joint account. There was a pause. Our records show otherwise. You're listed as a co-signer on an account created in 2020. The primary holder is Amelia Whitmore. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Some kind of identity mix-up. I asked them to verify everything. Names, dates, emails. And sure enough, it was my information. My social. My signature. Only I never signed anything. I hung up, shaking. My hands literally trembled. I called Serena into the room and told her what happened, and she just stared at me for a full 10 seconds before saying, "You need to lawyer up. Now." But I wasn't ready for lawyers. Not yet. I needed answers first. I called Amelia. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been waiting. Well, she said, that smug little lilt in her voice. Look who finally remembered we're family. I didn't rise to it. Did you open a joint bank account with my name on it? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm everything. Derek, she sighed, like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. You're being so dramatic. It's not a big deal. It's just that your credit's better than mine, and Trey's had issues. So Dad helped set it up. It was just to help us get approved for the lease. My credit? You used my credit? Are you out of your mind? Don't yell, she snapped. We're not doing this. You weren't using it anyway. It's not like it cost you anything. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears. You forged my signature. That's fraud. Now she laughed. Full-on, careless laughter. Oh, please. Dad said it's fine. Family doesn't sue family. You wouldn't actually go legal over this. And that's when I knew, really knew, that none of them saw me as a person. I was a wallet, a tool, a silent investor in the Great Amelia Project. And now that I'd stepped back, they weren't just annoyed, they were scrambling. Because without me, the scaffolding fell apart. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You're going to regret this," and hung up. I spent the rest of the evening digging. Calls to the bank. A visit to the branch. More document requests. Turns out the account had been used for all kinds of things. Furniture purchases, car repairs, even a few luxury spa days that made my stomach churn. The lease on their current place? Yup, tied to that account. And because I was the co-signer, I was liable for anything they defaulted on. My hands were tied unless I took it to court. When I confronted my parents, my dad didn't even look surprised. Just shrugged and said, "We didn't think you'd mind. You always say you're doing fine." And my mom, she had the nerve to say, "Why are you being so selfish, Derek? We just wanted Amelia to have a chance. You've always been stable. You don't understand what it's like for her." I just stared at them. Words failed me. Not a single apology. Not even fake remorse. It was like they believed, truly believed, that my success somehow obligated me to bail out Amelia forever. That my hard work was theirs to distribute. That my identity, my credit, my name, it was all fair game. And that's when something in me broke. Or maybe, more accurately, something in me woke up. I'd spent my entire life trying to be the good son, the reliable one, the one who didn't make waves. And what did I get? A forged signature, a stolen identity, and a family that saw me as an account, not a person. No more. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just started planning. Serena and I spent that weekend talking to a lawyer, an old client of mine, actually, who owed me a few favors. We went over everything. The fraud, the joint account, the emails, the texts, and slowly, brick by brick, I built a wall between me and them. Emotionally, financially, legally. And the best part? They didn't even see it coming. I haven't spoken to them since that last call. Not once. But from what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, they're confused, panicking. Bills are piling up. Credit cards are being declined. And Amelia? She's furious. Because now, when she cries for help, no one answers. When she runs to mom and dad, they shrug. And when she tries to guilt me through mutual friends, all she gets is silence. Because I'm done. Completely, utterly done. But this isn't the end. This is just the setup. Rock bottom doesn't always look like losing everything. Sometimes, it looks like sitting at your own kitchen table at 2:47 a.m., staring at a cold cup of tea, wondering how the people who raised you managed to raise a storm inside you instead of shelter. That was me, about a week after the joint account bombshell. The adrenaline of discovery had worn off, and in its place was this quiet, bone-deep ache. Not just from the betrayal. Though yeah, that was a fresh kind of sting, but from the grief of it all. Because that's what nobody tells you. Going no contact with toxic family isn't just a decision. It's a death. A funeral with no headstones, no eulogies. Just silence. And in that silence, I started to hear everything I'd ignored for years. The little comments. The side eyes. The way my parents had always talked through me, not to me. The way Amelia would borrow things without asking, then act like I was being dramatic for caring. The years I'd spent trying to buy their approval, thinking that if I just did one more thing, if I just helped one more time, they'd finally see me. But they never would, because I was never the favorite. I was the fallback plan, the safety net, the understudy. And now that I'd cut the cord, they were flailing. I wish I could say that realization came with a triumphant soundtrack and a slow-motion montage of me rising from the ashes, but the truth was far less cinematic. I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow, untethered, like I'd stepped off a moving train and was just waiting to hit the ground. Serena saw it before I did. She'd always been better at reading me than I was at reading myself. "You know you're allowed to be mad, right?" she said one night as we lay in bed, both of us staring at the ceiling like it had answers. "I am mad," I said. "No, you're disappointed. That's different." Anger says, "You hurt me, and I won't let you again." Disappointment says, "You hurt me, and I still wish you hadn't." I didn't respond. Not because I disagreed, but because it was too close to the truth. She turned on her side and tucked a hand under her cheek. "You gave them so much, Derek. You don't have to give them this, too." That landed hard. Because up until then, I had been giving them this. My thoughts, my sleepless nights, my stress. Even in silence, they were still collecting rent in my head. And that's when I realized I couldn't keep living in that place. Not if I wanted peace. So I started to climb. Not fast, not dramatically, but deliberately. First, I took a week off from the shop, not because business was slow, but because I was. I delegated to my team, trusted them to hold down the fort, and gave myself permission to breathe. It felt strange at first, like I was playing hooky from my own life. But then the quiet started to feel restorative, not suffocating. I cleaned out the garage, organized the tools I hadn't touched in years, found an old model car kit I'd bought back when I was 19 and broke, but still believed in hobbies. I started putting it together, piece by piece, like therapy in plastic. Then I went for long drives with no destination. Just me, the road, and whatever playlist Serena had left queued up on my phone. Sometimes I'd end up at a lake. Sometimes at a diner off the highway with the world's worst coffee. But it didn't matter. The point was movement, direction, even if it didn't always make sense. And slowly, the bitterness began to fade. Not entirely, not all at once, but enough. Meanwhile, my shop started doing better than ever. Maybe it was the break. Maybe it was my renewed clarity. I came back with sharper ideas, better workflow strategies, and a new resolve not to let work become my entire identity. I gave my crew raises, invested in some updated equipment, even set up a tiny waiting room with actual coffee that didn't taste like burnt despair. Word got out. Clients noticed. Business picked up. And one day, I looked up from an oil-streaked invoice and realized we'd hit our best quarter ever. That night, Serena and I went out for drinks. Not dinner, not a fancy celebration, just drinks at this rooftop bar she loved. The sun was setting, painting the city in orange and gold, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a teenager tinkering with engines in a borrowed garage. Hope. It was fragile, sure, but real. Of course, rebuilding isn't just about externals. The real work happened inside, quietly, awkwardly, sometimes painfully. I started therapy. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even Serena. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wasn't sure what I'd even say. How do you walk into a stranger's office and explain that your entire life has been one long audition for love you never got? But I did it. Week after week. I talked. I cried. I laughed at myself. I learned about boundaries and childhood roles and how being the responsible one often just means you were neglected in a more socially acceptable way. And slowly, I started forgiving myself. Not them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But myself. For staying too long. For trying too hard. For thinking love had to be earned with sacrifice. One afternoon, a few months into this quiet rebuilding, Serena walked into my office holding a letter. A real one. Not an email. Not a text. "It's from your mom," she said softly. I stared at the envelope like it was ticking. "You want me to read it first?" "No." I said and took it. The handwriting was familiar, curved, neat. The kind she'd practiced back when she used to write little notes in Amelia's lunchbox, but never in mine. I opened it. It was short. Derek, I don't know what you're doing or why you're trying to hurt this family. I hope you realize that cutting us off doesn't just punish us. It punishes your nieces, too. They miss you. Please stop being so cold. You're better than this. Mom, that was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just another guilt trip. Another reminder that in their minds, I was the problem. That my boundaries were cruelty. That their manipulation was just family. I folded the letter and set it aside. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to respond. Not with anger. Not with an explanation. Not even with silence. I just let it be. Because I was done living for people who only noticed me when I stopped serving them. That weekend, Serena and I went house hunting. Not because we needed to move, but because we could. We found this cozy two-story place with a big front porch and a backyard that caught the morning light just right. It needed work, sure, but then again, so did I. And I liked the idea of fixing something that was mine. A few weeks later, I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store. Someone who used to attend every birthday party, every cookout. I heard things are a bit tense with the family, she said gently. I nodded. Yeah, you could say that. She hesitated, then added, you know, your mom keeps telling people you're going through something. Like it's a phase. That you'll come back around. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Let her think that. Maybe it'll help her sleep. Because the truth was, I was going through something. But it wasn't a phase. It was a transformation. And what they didn't realize, what they never saw, was that in trying to break me, they'd handed me the tools to rebuild. Not as their puppet, not as their ATM, but as me. And just as I was starting to believe I could really leave them behind, an email arrived that changed everything. A subject line in bold, notice of legal action regarding account 1045, and with it, the fallout I didn't see coming. The subject line hit me like a slap in the face. Notice of legal action regarding account 1045. I was standing in the middle of my shop's back office when the email pinged in. 1 second, I was filling out a parts order for a client's transmission rebuild. The next, I was frozen in front of the screen, the words swimming in place. It didn't feel real at first, like maybe it was some phishing scam or a clerical error. But no, it was very, very real. Amelia had defaulted. The joint account, my name legally tied to every purchase, lease, and loan tied to it, had gone belly up. Missed payments, overdue balances, and a rental contract that had gone into early termination after she and Trey skipped 2 months of rent and ghosted the landlord. And guess who was still on the hook for all of it? Yup, me. I clicked through the attached documents like I was peeling off layers of a rotting onion. It was all there, bank records, statements, letters from a collections agency that had clearly tried reaching Amelia with no luck, and now had decided I was the next best target. $18,742.17. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the number. Not because I couldn't pay it. I could. But because I was never supposed to have to. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not like before, when I'd felt hurt, or heartbroken, or betrayed. This was colder, cleaner, like someone had flipped a switch from victim to executor. They thought I'd just eat it. Quietly, the way I always had. They didn't know me anymore. I forwarded the email to my lawyer that same afternoon. His name was Marco, a sharp, detail-obsessed guy with a memory like a steel trap and the patience of a brick wall. I'd helped him restore a classic Mustang a few years ago, and he'd always said if I ever needed legal work, he owed me. That debt was about to be collected. We met the next morning over coffee. I brought a USB drive with every piece of evidence I'd gathered over the past few months, screenshots, texts, transfers, even a scan of the original joint account paperwork with the forged signature. Marco scrolled through it all in silence, his eyebrows rising higher every few minutes. When he finished, he looked up slowly and said, Derek, this isn't just fraud. This is criminal. Identity theft, forgery, financial abuse. This is a textbook case. I nodded. So what are our options? Well, he said, steepling his fingers, you could file a police report. Let the state press charges. That would take it out of your hands, and it'd get ugly fast. Or he trailed off. Or, I asked, or we go civil. You sue her directly. And, if we're strategic about it, we rope your parents in too. show a pattern of coordinated abuse. You'll have to be meticulous. No outbursts. No text rants. Just evidence. Paper trails. Cold, hard truth. That part gave me pause. Because as much as I wanted justice, dragging my family through court wasn't just about money. It was about drawing a line in the sand that couldn't be undone. Once I filed, there'd be no more holidays. No apologies. No distant hope of reconciliation. But maybe that's what I needed. Not revenge. Freedom. So I said, do it. Marco nodded. All right. Then we start laying bricks. But first, we build pressure. That's when the setup truly began. Phase 1 was document everything. And I mean everything. Every text, every voicemail, every payment I'd made on Amelia's behalf going back years. Serena helped me sort it all, tagging things in color-coded folders until we had a digital library that looked like it belonged to a federal investigation. Then we started contacting businesses. The landlord who'd leased to Amelia? Furious. Turns out she'd left the apartment trashed, owing back rent and utilities. He was more than willing to provide a written statement about how I'd been listed as a co-signer without ever being present for the agreement. He even attached photos of the damage, stained carpets, broken tiles, crayon drawings all over the hallway walls. Like toddlers had been raised by raccoons. The bank was next. With Marco's guidance, I filed a formal affidavit stating that my signature had been forged and requested all account activity logs under my name. That triggered an internal review, which eventually led to an interesting discovery. The account had been created using a scan of my driver's license from 2018, a year when I hadn't seen Amelia in person even once. So where had she gotten the scan? I didn't have to think long. My dad. Back when I was refinancing my shop in 2018, I'd emailed him a copy of my license to help with some paperwork he was co-signing on temporarily. I'd trusted him, and apparently, he'd passed it along. Phase 2 of the plan was set the trap. I needed to know what their financial situation was like now that the Derrick Bank had closed its doors. So I reached out to an old acquaintance, Jenna, a childhood neighbor who still kept in touch with Amelia online. Jenna and I hadn't talked in years, but she'd always been kind, and she hated drama. I told her I was just worried about Amelia and wondered if she'd been posting anything odd lately. Jenna sent screenshots without hesitation. Instagram stories, Facebook posts, tweets, all the same theme. Poor me. Amelia was painting herself as the victim. She'd posted cryptic quotes like, "Family will betray you faster than strangers, and some people only love you when you're useful." She'd also shared a GoFundMe link for a temporary financial emergency, claiming her twins were at risk of eviction and that she'd been blindsided by unexpected debt. The goal? $10,000. The total after 3 weeks? $76. I almost felt bad. Almost. Phase 3. Let them come to me. Sure enough, it worked. 2 weeks after Marco filed a pre-litigation notice, I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. A voicemail came through. It was my dad. "Derek, call me. We need to talk. It's not too late to fix this." Fix what exactly? Then came the emails. First one from Amelia, full of insults thinly disguised as apologies. "I didn't think you'd take it this far. It was just a little help. You're blowing it out of proportion." Then a second one, more desperate. "The girls are scared, Derek. If we lose the apartment, where do they go? Is that what you want?" Guilt. They were always so good at it. But I didn't bite. Because this wasn't about a grudge anymore. This was about setting a precedent. And finally, the last piece of the setup, I filed a motion for restitution. Not just for the fraudulent debt, but for emotional damages and reputational harm. With Marco's help, we built a case showing how the financial manipulation had impacted not just my credit, but my mental health and professional stability. The court date was set, April 12th, and as it approached, I stayed quiet. No posts, no warnings. I wanted them off balance, scrambling, hoping I'd flinch first. I didn't, but they did. 1 week before the hearing, I got a knock at my shop door. It was my mom. She looked older, frilier, like the stress had finally settled into her bones. "Can we talk?" she asked. I crossed my arms. "About what?" She hesitated. "About family. About forgiveness. About ending this before it goes too far." I didn't say anything. So she continued. "Amelia's not well. Trey left. She's doing her best. And you were always the strong one, Derek. The responsible one. Can't you just be that again? One last time." It was almost funny. They always expected me to fix everything. Even now, even here. I looked her in the eye and said, I was the strong one. And that's exactly why I'm not fixing it this time. She didn't respond, just blinked, then turned and left without another word. April 12th is coming, and I'll be ready. Because when people like them burn bridges, they always assume you'll swim back with buckets of water. They never imagine you'll build a better island instead. April 12th arrived gray and cold, the kind of morning that feels like it's holding its breath. I stood outside the courthouse with Marco and Serena, dressed in a navy suit I hadn't worn since my best friend's wedding. It was tighter now, not from weight, but from tension. Every movement felt deliberate. Every step was a choice. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to end one. The courthouse lobby smelled faintly of coffee and floor wax. Serena squeezed my hand once before we went through the metal detectors. Marco led the way, briefcase in hand, crisp and unbothered. Me? I was all iron underneath. No rage. No panic. Just this slow, steady burn I'd been stoking for months. The hearing wasn't a full trial. Not yet. This was the preliminary proceeding, the first real test to determine whether our case would go to civil court or if the judge would recommend settlement. Either way, it was public. And that meant the truth would finally be spoken aloud, in front of strangers and on the record. They were already inside when we walked in. My parents sat stiffly on the left side of the courtroom, dressed in their Sunday best. My mom kept clutching her purse like it contained answers. My dad stared at the floor. Amelia sat between them, arms folded, chin tilted high like she was auditioning for sympathy. No tray, no lawyer, just a court-appointed representative she clearly didn't want. She glanced at me as I entered. No recognition, no remorse, just defiance. The judge, a woman named Harris, maybe early 50s, sharp eyes, short gray bob, called us to order. Introduced the case. Explained the claims, financial fraud, unauthorized use of personal identification, restitution for damages. Then she asked if I wanted to begin. Marco stood. Your Honor, he said, my client has been the silent workhorse of his family for decades. He supported his sister, covered bills, and even allowed his credit to be used, all without complaint. But when that generosity was weaponized against him, when his own identity was forged to support a lifestyle he never consented to, that generosity became exploitation. We're not here for vengeance. We're here for accountability. Then it was their turn. Amelia's court-appointed lawyer fumbled through a few weak defenses. No malicious intent, implied consent, confusion over family finances, but it was thin. Too thin. Judge Harris looked at Amelia. Ms. Whitmore, did you or did you not use your brother's information to open the joint account in 2020? Amelia crossed her arms. He never said I couldn't. You forged his signature. She scoffed. It's not like he wasn't helping anyway. What's the difference? The difference, Judge Harris said, voice hardening, is consent. Legal, written, informed consent, which you did not have. Amelia's jaw clenched. My mother leaned over to whisper something to her, but the judge cut her off. No coaching from the gallery, please. Then the evidence started rolling. Marco produced the screenshots, the GoFundMe page, the text messages asking for help followed by the ones denying it ever happened, the bank records, the apartment lease Amelia had defaulted on with my name attached. We had it all. Every lie, every manipulation, packaged in neat little folders. And then, the final blow, a video recording of a phone call I'd had with Amelia shortly after discovering the joint account. State laws allowed one-party recording, and I'd taken advantage. In the clip, you could hear her voice, crystal clear. It's not a big deal. You weren't using it anyway. That's fraud, Amelia. Oh, please. Dad said it's fine. Family doesn't sue family. You wouldn't actually go legal over this. When it ended, the room was silent. Judge Harris looked at Amelia again. Do you deny making that statement? Amelia fidgeted. I didn't mean it like that. I was upset. You were calm. You were dismissive. And you were fully aware you'd done something wrong. Then Harris turned to my parents. You two submitted character statements on your daughter's behalf? Is that correct? They both nodded. You claimed your son's actions were spiteful, that he was attacking the family out of jealousy, that he was unstable. Again, they nodded. Judge Harris pulled up their signed statements. In light of the evidence, those claims now appear misleading at best, defamatory at worst. Mr. Whitmore has demonstrated repeated, good faith efforts to support your daughter. The abuse was not just financial. It was emotional, chronic, systematic. She turned back to Marco. Mr. Whitmore, what are you seeking in damages? Marco stood. Restitution of $18,742.17 for the debts incurred through the fraudulent account. An additional $25,000 in compensatory damages for stress and reputational harm. We're also requesting a formal injunction preventing Ms. Whitmore from opening any lines of credit using Mr. Whitmore's identity moving forward. Harris scribbled notes. Then she asked the one question that caught me off guard. Mr. Whitmore, do you want to proceed to trial? I looked at Marco, then at Serena, then at them, my family. Amelia's face had crumpled, not into remorse, into fear. Real fear. My mom sat frozen, hand over her mouth. My dad stared at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Your Honor, I said, standing, I don't want a trial. I want them to understand that they don't get to rewrite the story anymore. That I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't cold, or distant, or bitter. I was taken advantage of, repeatedly, and I'm done letting them pretend otherwise. I let the silence settle, then added, and yes, I want restitution. Every cent. Judge Harris nodded slowly. So ordered. The gavel hit the bench. Case closed. The fallout was immediate. Court-ordered garnishment of Amelia's wages began within the month. The restitution payments would take years, but that didn't matter to me. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the message. The truth was now permanent, on paper, in court records, and most importantly, outside their control. The story they'd built for decades, that I was the standoffish older brother, that Amelia was the sweet, misunderstood artist, that my parents were just doing their best, collapsed. And they had to live in the rubble. Amelia's GoFundMe was reported and taken down. Her social media turned private after waves of comments questioned her version of events. Train never returned. Turns out he'd been planning to leave for months, and my lawsuit gave him the final push. Last I heard, she'd moved into a 2-bedroom with a roommate, working part-time at a bakery and dodging payments every chance she could. My parents tried to do damage control. They reached out to mutual friends, spread rumors, claimed I'd been brainwashed by Serena, that therapy had turned me against the family. But people saw through it. Because for once, I wasn't quiet. I didn't smear them. I didn't rant. I just told the truth. Calmly. Factually. And people listened. It's been 6 months since the hearing. Serena and I are still in the house with the big porch and the sunlit backyard. The garage is half finished, but I don't mind. I like projects that take time now. I like building things slowly, with intention. The shop's thriving. I promoted 2 of my guys to management roles. Started mentoring local high schoolers who want to learn automotive work. It feels good, not just making money, but making space. And as for family, I have one. It just doesn't include the people who shared my DNA. My family is Serena. My crew. My friends who showed up when I didn't even know I needed them. People ask me if I regret it, cutting them off, taking it to court, burning the bridge. But the thing is, I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped carrying water to put out their fires. And when they lit the match, I finally let it burn. The difference is, this time, I walked away with the map.